Hi, my name is Al Green. Not that one, but the struggling guy who was in the music industry for years trying to sell talent and songs to agents. The agents befriended me and taught me techniques that I want to pass on to you through my program, which is called You Can Talk, You Can Sell. Anyone who has ever taken this program has excelled in selling and either risen to the top of their company, their team, or the top of their field. It's called You Can Talk, You Can Sell, and you can get it right here. Afraid to do cold calling? Are you hesitant to do cold calling? Because as a salesperson, all of us typically don't cold call comfortably. At some point, we get the hang of it, but in the beginning, and sometimes for even a few years, we feel like we're bothering people. And yet there are salespeople out there that thrive and succeed because they cold call. In reality, if you have a nationally branded company and everybody knows the name, you're not really cold calling. You're technically just visiting because you don't have to tell them exactly who the company is and what they do. They probably already know. If you have a national branded company, if you're selling for a company like IBM, or you're selling services by Google, they already know the name. Cold calling is when you contact a customer, a prospect, with a product and a company that they've never heard of before. And there's plenty of companies that are brand new. And you go out into the world and you say, I've got a new product that's not like anybody else's. It's from a company you've never heard of, and you want to get them into a conversation. That's a cold call. A lot of times you go knocking doors and you feel like, oh my God, I'm bothering these people. And you're going to get a lot of people that say thank you, but no thank you. Oh, now is not a good time. Can you come back later? You're going to get that. But when you are dropping in on companies, sometimes you can do that. You can learn to go to a company without an appointment and ask to see somebody and get inside. One of the things that we cover is how do you break that barrier of getting inside a company that has the world closed off, especially if it has anything to do with entertainment. How do you get in to see somebody at Paramount Pictures? How do you get in to see somebody in a major publishing company in New York City, or in a music company that's publishing recordings, or MTV, or anybody for that matter? How do you get into Netflix to sell them a movie idea? How do you get past the gatekeeper? How do you get indoors, inside to see somebody? Believe it or not, that's covered in the workshop. You Can Talk, You Can Sell, and you will learn what techniques have worked and continue to work when it comes to dealing in fields like that. But you should never feel intimidated for doing a cold call, because if your company is asking you to do it, or in some cases forcing you to do it, look at it this way. It's been a long, long time, but years ago, Avon representatives would go door to door selling cosmetics. Fuller Brush, you've heard of the Fuller Brush man. A guy that would go door to door selling everything from cleaning supplies to all kinds of household, literally brushes that you could clean things with. Now those guys had to have a lot of personal fortitude to just approach people and sell something that everybody already knows. But you couldn't buy it in stores, you had to get it from somebody, so their job was to get past your front door and get inside your house with you so they could talk to you. And they were darn good at it. The people who started and were struggling stuck with it until they licked it, and then they were able to get inside. It's no different if you're selling to a company where their security is that tight and you can't go into the back door. I developed a technique for backdoor sales that I taught to my first students, and I can tell you it worked for them too. Because everywhere you go is not an open door for you. So how do you get a cold call, and do you get past the gatekeeper, the people that are screening you, to get to the person who's a truly decision maker of your company, of their company, your customer's company? There are ways to do that, but just remember this. You should never fear cold calling. It's just something you do. If your company says go do cold calling, what they mean is calling on customers without an appointment, but that is not true cold calling. A lot of times you'll see major companies sending people out right now, sending salespeople out. AT&T, for example, they're selling not just cell phones, but they sell internet services, and they send sales reps out into the world to go to houses, to go to doors, and knock on the doors and say, I'm from AT&T. Well, when you have that, you have people that know who AT&T is. They pretty much know what they do. Yet, there they are out in the field. They're picking up the slack that the company can't do themselves, because no company can get 100% from internet and advertising on TV. And a lot of times a lot of companies have telemarketers that call people at random and try to sell them exactly what it is you might be selling. Companies that the inside of that company might be competing against the outside sales reps. And it feels like you don't have the advantage, but in reality, you need to look at it this way. It's the sales reps that are in the outside world that are threatening the inside people, not the other way around. Because it's a lot easier to close a sale when you're looking at somebody in the eye as opposed to just a voice on the phone. No matter how good the script is for the telemarketer, it's better to be in person. A cold call is nothing more than a surprise visit. That's all it is. It's not really a cold call. If you have a big enough area, you're going to run into so many different situations. And if you tell the stories later, you're going to find out it's pretty crazy. Years ago, I was assigned to an area that was pretty heavily patrolled by the police, because it was considered a somewhat unsafe area. Nobody would take the territory. And I said, I'll take it, because there has to be people there that are not visited, and there's going to be less sales resistance. I found out something very interesting about working in a neighborhood like that. I made one sale to a person who was actually in a gang in the area, and he and I got along really well, and he liked what I did. And then later on, the next day, I was walking, it was starting to get dark, and there was this car following me. My company said to me, when that happens, walk up to them and say, can I help you? All right, I figured, okay, nothing's happened to me so far, so I went up to these guys, and they said, are you the guy that sold my buddy over here at the corner of, and he mentioned the two intersections. I said, yeah, the guy's name was, and I mentioned his name. He goes, you took care of him? He goes, yeah, man. He goes, I want you to take care of me like that too. I said, okay. He goes, we got your back. If anybody gives you any hard time, the guy gave me his name. He goes, you come see me. I'll take care of you. Well, I didn't know that was going to happen. As far as I knew, these guys were following me in their car while I was walking, and they were out to cause me some trouble, but they didn't. Okay? I kept going back to that same neighborhood, and people got to know me there. And then I felt pretty safe because these people were looking out for me. And then I ended up making enough sales to make my quota and achieve a higher than quota number for the month, because that was an area that nobody would work. So it was like what they call virgin territory. No one had worked it, so it was great. I talked to these people, and they were nice. They'd open up their homes. They would offer me things to drink. They would offer me dinner. They'd offer me to come back and watch the baseball game with them. I mean, it was pretty crazy. But those kind of things happen because you lose the fear of talking to people on a strange one-on-one basis where you just knock on their door. After you do it enough time, you have to look at it like practice. You're practicing, and your company is covering you to practice. Now, this doesn't work in every neighborhood. There's some neighborhoods you wouldn't want to dare walk into. I agree. There's some industrial areas that are just as tough. There was one industrial area. I went with the owner of a company, and at 2:30 they told me I'd better leave. And they started locking up the yard. They had like these 20-foot fences with barbed wire on the top. They said, you don't want to be in this neighborhood after 3 o'clock. I said, okay. But the fact is, they appreciated the fact that I went to that neighborhood and cold called them. Later on, 2 months later, I had sold them 3 different times. Now, that's only me. That's not everybody. But I have seen guys that just have absolutely no reservations about knocking on doors or cold calling. And a lot of times when I was doing my referral business, I would call on people out of the blue. I'd show up. And a lot of times I'd go to their houses at 6 o'clock at night. They're home from work. Okay? Everybody's saying, why aren't you going home? Well, I don't quit at 6. I quit later. My time to stop knocking was 8 o'clock at night. And if I couldn't knock, I would leave a brochure, because I've covered this earlier. You should always have a brochure. Always give them something to leave behind. You can use that as a reason to follow up. But don't fear cold calling. There's a lot of untapped sales to be made by cold calls. Keep that in mind and keep doing it.